Good morning, Your Excellency, and to all of you who've come to attend this program. I think it's such a privilege to be able to speak to people who actually want to listen to you. Like Ogopi, just ahead of me, said, we used to seeing the same faces over and over. This is why our Honorable Speaker also recognizes so many faces wherever he goes. But today, I think it's different, the group that came here. A lot of us in the media don't seem to recognize the faces, but it's such a privilege, I must share with you, that we want to share because you're here to listen of your own volition and not because somebody forced you to be here. Why am I here today? I'm here to talk about what has media got to do with the biodemocracy. I'm not as erudite as the two speakers ahead of me. I'm not an academic either. I really do not like PowerPoint presentations. If I do presentations, it will be when I'm doing a workshop or a training for an entire day on gender or something you really need to read to understand. What I have to share with you today is more of an exercise of questioning and to really make you curious about what Bhutanese media could do in what is a biodemocracy. Because we had tea, etc. We've had a few hours of discussion on this, but I hear a lot of people still mulling over biodemocracy and trying to understand what it is. I'm trying to understand it as well. Honorable Speaker laid it out really well in the morning speech, and I think I will follow after. I'm glad to be following after. Glad to be following after Ogopi and Osige as well, because this is all part of a biodemocracy. The media's role in a democracy, all of you understand, it's vital. We are the fourth estate, we hold people accountable, etc., etc. But what about a biodemocracy? So for me, when I first heard this, when I first read this rather, it was a tweet from the Center for Local Governance and Research. And I was like, what is this biodemocracy? And I thought about it for a while. A few days after, Osange Kandu comes and he's like, would you be interested in speaking at the conference? And I said, at first I wasn't too sure because I'm not an expert. I hadn't read up on biodemocracy or seen it in the news anywhere. So my relationship with biodemocracy starts with biodiversity. So I asked Osange Kandu, I said, for me, when I hear biodemocracy, I think of biodiversity. And I'm going to be taking it forward from there. And he said, in a way, you're right too. So my example today focused completely on forests. Okinga did allude to it a little while earlier. And of course, Osige did answer a question. I'm not dwelling on blockchain technology because that is not my area of expertise. But writing stories is. So what is a biodemocracy? The word sustainability comes to mind because of its association with biodiversity as well as ecology. Can we have then a sustainable democracy? Do we have a sustainable democracy now? I'm going to be starting with questions. We do have a democracy, yes. We can't agree on the definition of sustainability. And this is where the problem arises. Because when we talk about democracy, democracy is really based on consensus. But when we talk about sustainability, do we have that consensus? And this is where I see a subtle problem arise. Because we lack consensus. Forget about the US and the climate change skeptics. Let's look at ourselves here. How many of you are familiar with Dr.Phuntsho's work? May I see a show of hands now? Okay, see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, there's no peer pressure to keep raising your hands now. But yeah, 12. I was introduced quite late, unfortunately, Dr. Phuntsho's work. And it was through a story covered by BBS. It said, cut trees, save forests, if I'm not mistaken. And the headline really caught my attention. And I was like, what is this? Then I read it. And I was like, wow, this is quite a revelation to me. So what Dr. Phuntsho is saying, that our forests are overstocked. And what do you mean by overstocked? Our constitution mandates that we have 60% forest cover at all time, and this is minimum. What is our forest cover right now? Anybody wants to hazard a guess? What is our forest cover? Love? 68? 30%? Utsav? Okay, 80%. Oh, it's close to it. So what Dr. Phuntsho says is we have 84% forest cover in the country. Now, is this good for us? In terms of PR, in terms of making it to wonderful environmental magazines and conservation articles, it's fantastic because we happen to be, now we're not the only country, but we are the first carbon negative country to be recognized in the world. Now we have a country called, I'm not too sure how to pronounce it, Suriname or Suriname. So there are 2 small countries in the world that are carbon negative. This is excellent for Bhutan. But what are we gaining out of our carbon negativity, right? So what is our older trees and 84% forest cover doing to Bhutan? So Dr. Phuntsho says that it is detrimental to our hydrology. trees use up a lot of water. I'm not going to say that Thimphu's water shortage is because of this, but this is one of the dangers. Mega fires are caused by having forest cover like this. It is also a threat to biodiversity. And for me, this was new knowledge. I was extremely excited about it. And I shared it, thinking that Bhutanese would share in my excitement to my Facebook page. And a lot of controversial things always keep happening on my page. The intent is good, the end result never. So after a few hours, I go back thinking, oh, I've actually engaged Bhutanese in a conversation on forest management. I go back, oh my God, the fury that met me on my page. People were so upset that a Bhutanese, that too a forester, would dare tell people to cut down trees. How dare you, you know? So that got me thinking, what are we proud about? I already mentioned carbon negativity. But then think about a social forestry day. What do we do on a social forestry day, La? La? Plant trees. Do we need to plant trees? Is what I started to think. Why are we only focusing on planting trees? Why aren't we having a conversation about why we must cut trees too? Because this apparently is also a good thing for Bhutan. We have mandated 60% forest cover at all time through our wonderful constitution. We have 84%. We're importing more wood than we're exporting. And what Dr.Phuntsho says, another brilliant idea, is that you can actually make more money out of our forests than we make out of hydropower. I'm not going to get into the numbers because I don't remember it. I'm not a numbers person, but it's huge, it's tremendous. If you read his articles, you'll find them on Quinsel as well as on BBS. Now, where does the media come in here? We're not foresters. The conversation. Do we have to lead this conversation? I think yes. If you see all of the stories by Dr. Phuntsho, it's either opinion pieces or a coverage of a conference or researchers. But a journalist has not led this forward by asking the question, what is sustainability in Bhutan? Is it cutting down trees or is it planting trees? Or is it both? But we're not asking these questions. This is why I think the media can play a really important role in creating a biodemocracy. Do we want to be the kind of democracies that we see around us? For instance, until recent times, we would look at the US as an example of what a democracy should be. But today, when I look at the US, that's the last thing I want Bhutan's democracy to be like. Or even look in the region. Look at Nepal, look at India, look at the Maldives. Is that the kind of democracy we want? That is the power of the majority, for the people, by the people. I think not. Because if you're to go by the majority, even just in Bhutan, people want to keep planting trees. You don't want to cut down trees, but research. And this is the minority. Foresters and researchers like Dr. Phuntsho are the minority, even in our forestry community in Bhutan. This is why we're still planting trees in Bhutan. This is something for us to think about. So who creates the consensus of taking it from the circles of minority to the majority? It's the media. Can we lead the conversation to make people see that what we need to talk about now is also forest management? And it doesn't make you less Bhutanese to do so. It doesn't mean you're disrespecting the constitution. But what the media needs to do now, unlike other times, and I want to say unlike in the democracy, where we really echo the voices of the majority and present, or lead the majoritarian conversation forward, we need to bring the conversation of the minority to the fore. What we need to do now is not just report on the consensus, but to create a consensus. This is the role of the media in a biodemocracy. Thank you, Lab.